My name is Eric, and I learned in the most painful way that betrayal doesn't always wear a mask of malice. More often than not, it hides behind familiar eyes and a trusted smile. I built my life around loyalty and hard work, believing that if I gave everything I had, to my job, to my marriage, to the future I dreamed of, then eventually, the universe would respond in kind. For years, I truly believed it had. My career was thriving, I was married to a woman I adored, and the road ahead looked promising. I worked at one of the top firms in the financial world. While my coworkers shut their laptops and walked out at 5 sharp, I stayed behind, chasing ambition long into the night. I wasn't just working, I was shaping something lasting, something meaningful. After years of sacrifice, it felt like all that effort was finally about to pay off. The company's annual gala wasn't just a fancy evening, it was the event where futures were unveiled and careers took flight. Promotions weren't whispered in offices, they were declared front and center for all to witness. It was a night where reputations were cemented. And that year, I was a top contender for one of the most sought-after positions in the firm. It wasn't about the salary, not really. It was about acknowledgement, about proving that every all-nighter and skipped holiday had been worth it. Jolynn, my wife, the woman I had built my life with, was meant to be there to share that moment with me. We had been together for years. She wasn't just my partner. She was the one person I shared every corner of my life with. Never once had I doubted her devotion. Until that night. The venue was nothing short of breathtaking. Golden chandeliers bathed the room in a soft, warm glow, the tables dressed in elegance, crystal stemware, shining silver, and an air of quiet opulence. Ambition hung in the air like perfume. I walked in, proud, my hand resting lightly at Jolynn's waist. This was the night everything could change, and she was by my side, exactly where I believed she belonged. Jolynn had always been captivating, but that evening she was on another level. Her black dress fit like a second skin, her hair fell in soft, deliberate waves, and her smile seemed to light up every corner of the room. People noticed, they always did. When she spoke, conversations slowed. When she laughed, heads turned. For the first stretch of the evening, everything felt exactly right. I introduced her to my colleagues, and as usual, she charmed everyone she met. She had a gift for making people feel important, seen. But then, something subtle shifted. A barely perceptible change. So small at first, I brushed it off. It began with a glance, a moment of eye contact I almost didn't register. But then I saw where her attention landed, or more accurately, on whom. Luke, my boss. The man who had built the company from the ground up. Charismatic, razor-sharp, effortlessly influential. He didn't just lead, he embodied the firm's success. And Jolynn, she wasn't just looking at him. She was watching him like the rest of the room had vanished. Not a glance, a stare, focused, intent. And then Luke looked back. A sly smirk crept across his face, measured, unmistakably aware. He recognized the look she gave him, and he didn't shy away from it. He welcomed it. Something inside me clenched. Jolynn turned her attention away just as quickly, laughing lightly at someone else's comment, her tone breezy and bright. But moments later, her gaze drifted right back to him. I exhaled slowly, reaching for my drink, trying to convince myself it meant nothing, that I was being paranoid. I forced myself to engage in the chatter around me, smiling where expected, nodding at the right beats. But something felt off. It was like the room had gone cold, like I was no longer part of the scene but watching from the outside. Then, without realizing when it happened, I saw them together, standing side by side, talking, laughing. Jolynn leaned in ever so slightly, her hand brushing his sleeve in a way that could have seemed harmless, except to me. I gripped my glass a little tighter. The sounds of the party, music, voices, clinking glasses, blurred into background noise. All I could see was them. Luke leaned in as she spoke, his grin wide and genuine. And then she did something that made my stomach knot. She tucked her hair behind her ear, a tiny, habitual movement, one I knew all too well. Jolene only did that when she was feeling shy, or when she was flirting. My jaw clenched. And then, for the first time that evening, our eyes met. Her expression faltered for just a second, a flicker of something she hadn't intended to show. Guilt. It was there, as brief as a flash of lightning. But I caught it. A crack in the facade. And then, just like that, it was gone. She smiled at me, as if nothing had happened, as if I was imagining things. But I wasn't. She stayed close to Luke for the rest of the evening. I did my best to act unaffected, to keep up appearances, to stay present. But I couldn't stop glancing over. She laughed too hard at his jokes. Her hand kept finding its way back to his arm, her fingers resting there a moment too long. And Luke? He leaned into it. He wasn't ignoring her attention. He was encouraging it. His hand brushed the small of her back, lightly, but unmistakably intimate. I wanted so badly to believe I was wrong, that I was misreading the situation, but the sinking feeling in my gut said otherwise. Then, at some point, Jolene reappeared beside me. Her touch on my arm was casual. "I have to take a call," she said, holding up her phone just enough for me to glimpse the screen. There was no name, just a number. Something didn't feel right. "Okay," I answered, careful to keep my voice steady. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek like everything was normal, and disappeared into the crowd. I watched her go, a strange dryness in my throat. 5 minutes passed. Luke vanished too. That's when the cold reality set in. I scanned the room, my eyes darting from the bar to the dance floor, then to the balcony beyond the glass doors. They weren't anywhere. That's when it struck me. I hadn't seen either of them for nearly 20 minutes. A tightness coiled in my chest. I placed my drink on a nearby table, hands balling into fists. I started moving, slipping between clusters of people, weaving through laughter, chatter, and thumping music. The sound faded as I stepped into a dimly lit hallway. Then, there it was. Faint laughter. Muffled, concealed. I froze, heart hammering. A low whisper followed, then a moan, quiet, but clear. My body went rigid, a cold rush spreading through my veins. I followed the sound, steadying my breath. One of the doors down the corridor was ajar, a sliver of warm light bleeding into the hall. I pulled out my phone, pressed record, and pushed the door gently open. That's when I saw them. Jolene, Luke. Her back pressed against the wall, his hands gripping her hips, her fingers tangled in the fabric of his suit. His lips trailed her neck. My stomach turned. They both froze, caught mid-motion. I didn't speak right away. The camera had already captured the scene. Then my voice cut through the air, calm and razor-sharp. "This is Jolene, my wife, and Luke, my boss. And this is what betrayal looks like happening just down the hall from where I stood." Jolene jumped back, eyes wide with panic. "Eric!" she stuttered, but I wasn't listening. Luke raised his hands, words fumbling from his lips. "Wait, man, this isn't—" He didn't finish. I slipped the phone into my pocket and drove my fist straight into his jaw. He stumbled backward, clutching his face in pain. I didn't give him time to recover. I grabbed his collar and dragged him through the hallway. I slammed the main doors open and shoved him into the middle of the party. The music and laughter still filled the room. But not for long. A hush spread like wildfire. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. I didn't hesitate. My voice rang out, cutting the silence in half. "Want to know who this guy is?" I looked around. "He's the one sleeping with my wife." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Faces shifted. Shock, confusion, pity. Jolene stood frozen in the doorway, color drained from her face. Luke wrestled free from my grip, his expression twisted in desperation. "Eric!" Jolene's voice cracked. I met her gaze with ice in mine. "It's over." I turned and walked away. No more words, nothing left to say. I didn't touch the radio as I drove. Just silence. The city lights blurred through the windshield, but my mind had never been clearer. My phone buzzed over and over. I didn't check it. I already knew who it was. When I pulled into the driveway, I just sat there for a moment, staring at the house I once called home. It looked the same, but it wasn't. Now, it was only a facade, hollow walls, empty vows. Inside, I moved like a guest. I found a suitcase and started packing whatever I needed. There was no chance I'd sleep here again, not in that bed. The phone kept buzzing. I finally looked at the screen. 12 missed calls, all from Jolene. I could have shut it off, but I didn't. I let it ring, let her sit in that uncertainty, let the weight of her choices sink in. Just as I zipped the bag and reached for my keys, the front door slammed open. Jolene stood in the doorway, breathless, streaks of mascara tracing down her cheeks. Her chest heaved with ragged sobs. "Eric, please, just hear me out," she begged. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. "There's nothing left to hear." I moved toward the door, but she caught my arm, her grip unsteady. "It was a mistake," she said, voice breaking. "It didn't mean anything. Don't throw us away over this." I turned to face her, eyes burning. "A mistake? You humiliated me. In front of people I work with, friends. And now you want to talk about saving our marriage?" Tears streamed down her face as she clung to my arm. "I love you," she whispered. I pulled free, her touch like fire on my skin. "You lost the right to say that," I said quietly. "You had a choice. You made it." Her face crumpled. She reached out again, desperation in her every movement. "Eric, please." "No." My voice was low and final. "We're done. I'm filing for divorce." The words struck her like a blow. She staggered, sobbing, broken. I didn't stay. No more pleading. No more apologies. I stepped out the door, her cries echoing behind me. That night, I drove to a hotel, checked in. The bed was stiff, the room bare. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open. Sleep never came. Only silence. And memories. The shock frozen on Jolene's face in the lounge. The way Luke's smile disappeared the moment our eyes met. Her desperate voice trailing behind me as I walked away. None of it held meaning anymore. The following morning, I got up, stood under a hot stream of water until my thoughts cleared, dressed, and went straight to the highest-rated divorce lawyer I could find. Sitting across from him, my jaw locked tight and fingers interlaced, I didn't waver. "I want a divorce," I said plainly, "and I want to make sure she walks away with as little as the law allows." He nodded once and flipped open a blank legal pad. "Leave it to me." With that process underway, my next move was clear: Luke. I walked into the office building with purpose, ignoring the casual hellos from colleagues as I headed straight to human resources. By the time the sun set, people would view me differently. I took a seat across from Peggy, head of HR, and slid my phone across her desk. "You'll want to watch this." I tapped play. Luke's image filled the screen, his arms wrapped around my wife. Peggy's posture stiffened as the footage unfolded. We said nothing while the clip ran. Jolene leaned into him, her body language giving everything away. A brief kiss followed, casual and familiar, ending any doubt. When it stopped, Peggy drew in a long breath, her lips tight. "This is serious." "There's more," I told her. "Luke's been abusing his position here for months. People have whispered about it, but nobody wanted to be the first to step up. I'm stepping up." She didn't hesitate. An internal investigation began the same day. Then the stories came out. Accounts from women who had been misled, pressured, deceived by Luke's empty promises of promotions and influence. By the end of the week, he was finished, fired, his reputation shattered. 2 days later, The divorce papers were delivered to Jolene. No warning, no phone call. Just the same kind of cold finality she'd given me when she chose someone else. I handed her an envelope instead of a goodbye. And that's when the messages began. Please don't do this. Eric, can we talk? I love you. I miss you. I read every one, but I never replied. A few days passed before I returned to the house, not out of nostalgia, but to collect a few personal things I hadn't grabbed before, items I didn't want to lose. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a sleek black car I didn't recognize parked out front. My hands clenched around the steering wheel. I got out slowly, instincts already firing. Inside, the house felt hollow. No TV, no voices, just thick, eerie silence, until I heard something. Faint noises from the hallway. My chest tightened. Then again, soft, unmistakable moans from the bedroom. I didn't stop. I walked straight down the hall and pushed open the door. There they were, Jolene and Luke, twisted together in the bed that used to be ours. Time froze. Luke's face went pale, caught between speaking and saying nothing. Jolene scrambled to grab the sheets, her eyes huge and panicked. "Eric," she whispered. But what I saw in her expression wasn't remorse, it was fear. She thought she'd gotten away with it, that I'd never know, that I'd keep living in the dark, still believing I mattered to her. For a long moment, no one moved. Then her face changed, hardened. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, irritation coloring her voice. I let out a short, joyless laugh, not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. That's what she had to say? No apology. No explanation. Just, "What are you doing here?" Like I was the intruder. I looked from her to Luke, then to the bed that no longer felt like anything of mine. I gave a slow shake of my head. "I made the right decision," I said softly, and turned away. No shouting, no dramatic outburst. I didn't need it. I had the clarity I came for. She had cried, she had begged, claimed she still loved me. And less than 2 days later, she invited him back, into our home, into that bed. That told me everything I needed to know. I closed the door behind me and never looked back. The weeks after that were all about starting fresh. I found a small apartment. No memories, no lies, just a blank page. Life got quieter, simpler. Work, gym, a drink here and there with friends who actually cared. Nothing chaotic, nothing fake. But it was mine. The divorce wrapped up quicker than expected. Jolene didn't contest it. She kept the house and took a small part of my savings. I didn't fight it. Then, I heard something that nearly made me laugh. Luke dumped her. Didn't take long, maybe a couple months at most. He got what he came for. And when the novelty faded, he disappeared. Just like I always suspected he would. I can only imagine her face when it hit her, how she burned her life to the ground for someone who walked away like it meant nothing. Right on schedule, the final message came through. "Eric, please, can we talk?" There was a time when those words would have broken me, but not anymore. I stared at the screen. Then I erased the message, and I moved on, because not everything is worth saving.